Around 4 p.m. on 24 December 1999, Indian Airlines flight number IC 814, like usual, took off from Tribhuvan International Airport in Kathmandu and was headed to New Delhi. Just a few hours later, Christmas was going to be celebrated, and the New Year was also around the corner. So, everyone inside the plane was in a very happy and excited mood. Every person sitting in the plane was feeling joyful and eagerly waiting to reach their destination. There were 176 passengers and 15 crew members on board. Most of them were Indian citizens, but a few foreign nationals were also on this flight. The flight was being commanded by Captain Devi Sharan, with co-pilot Rajendra Kumar, and Chief Flight Attendant Anil Sharma. The plane had already climbed up to 10,000 feet and was flying smoothly in its set direction. After taking off from Kathmandu, it soon entered Indian airspace, and in about an hour to an hour and a half, it was expected to land at Indira Gandhi International Airport in New Delhi. Although the destination was not far, no one on board could even imagine that this short journey would soon turn into a long and terrifying ordeal. What was about to happen next was scarier than a nightmare. As soon as the plane entered Indian airspace, 5 masked men, holding guns, suddenly stood up in front of the passengers. These men were terrorists, and their goal was to hijack the plane. To take control, one of the hijackers went into the cockpit with a gun and pointed it at Captain Devi Sharan and co-pilot Rajendra Kumar. The other 4 hijackers started threatening the passengers and crew members with weapons. The atmosphere inside the plane quickly turned into a scene of fear and chaos. Passengers were in shock and could not believe that just moments ago, the people sitting next to them were actually terrorists. Once the hijackers had full control, they separated children and women on one side and young passengers on the other side. While the passengers were terrified, inside the cockpit the hijacker was threatening the captain to fly the plane westward. The real plan of these hijackers was to take the plane to Pakistan. They had come with full planning and preparation. They were so cautious that instead of using their real names, they used code names like Chief, Burger, Doctor, Bhola, and Shankar while talking to each other. Within just a few minutes, they managed to create fear in everyone, from the passengers to the pilot and crew, using just their guns. Now the plane was completely under the control of the hijackers, and they wanted to take it to Lahore Airport in Pakistan. Under pressure, Captain Devi Sharan turned the plane westward, away from Delhi. As soon as the plane changed direction, the hijackers felt that their plan was working, so they relaxed a bit. Taking advantage of this moment, Captain Sharan secretly sent a message to Indian Air Traffic Control, ATC, using the transponder, informing them that the plane had been hijacked. That was the first time at 4 p.m. Indian ATC got to know that flight IC 814 had been hijacked. As soon as they got this news, the ATC became alert and immediately informed the Central Government's Crisis Management Group, CMG. At that time, the CMG was being led by Cabinet Secretary Prabhat Kumar, but he did not act urgently. No emergency meeting was called, and they also did not contact the Foreign Intelligence Bureau or RAW, Research and Analysis Wing, even though the situation was very serious. Because of this, Captain Sharan did not receive any help or guidance from the Indian authorities. The surprising thing is that Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee came to know about the hijacking almost an hour later. Captain Sharan was confused why the ATC wasn't responding at all in such a dangerous situation. After not getting any response for some time, he understood how serious the situation was. He could clearly see the danger to himself and all the passengers, which made him feel very hopeless, but he was still forced to take the plane toward Pakistan's border. After flying westward for a while, Captain Sharan requested permission to land at Lahore Airport, but Pakistani ATC rejected his request. Just a few months before, India and Pakistan had fought the Kargil War, in which India had defeated Pakistan badly. Because of this, relations between the two countries were very tense. At that time, the relationship between India and Pakistan was very sensitive, so Pakistan did not want to do anything that might make it look suspicious. That's why, along with refusing to allow landing, Pakistan also threatened Captain Sharan, saying that if the Indian plane entered Lahore, they would shoot it down. This response from Pakistan put Captain Sharan in a very difficult position. He couldn't think of any way out. He tried to suggest that the plane land at an Indian airport instead, but the hijackers did not agree. They were afraid that landing in India would ruin all their plans. Because no destination was being finalized, the plane kept flying in circles around the India-Pakistan border. As a result, the fuel was running out very quickly. If the plane didn't land soon, a crash was certain. Captain Sharan became very worried, but even in this tense situation, he tried to find a solution. He contacted Indian Air Traffic Control, ATC, again and requested them to ask the Indian government to request Pakistan for emergency landing permission for the Indian plane. He also told the Indian ATC that Pakistan was not allowing the plane to enter Lahore, and the hijackers were frustrated. At any moment, they could attack the passengers. This news shocked the Indian authorities and the whole country. Every news channel in India and around the world was now showing headlines that an Indian Airlines plane had been hijacked. 5 masked terrorists hijack Indian Airlines flight IC 814, carrying 11 crew members and 179 passengers. The whole world was watching how India would respond. But sadly, many top Indian officials learned about the hijacking through news channels, not from official sources. Because the Crisis Management Group, CMG, didn't act quickly earlier, a lot of time had already been lost. After finally receiving the news, Indian authorities began to take action immediately. At 6:30 p.m., the Indian High Commission requested Pakistan to allow the plane to land in Lahore. But Pakistan rejected India's request. Once again, the plane began flying in circles near the India-Pakistan border. Now, there was only 1 hour of fuel left in the plane. Seeing this situation, Captain Sharan made one last attempt. He told the hijackers that the plane was almost out of fuel and could crash if it didn't land soon. So, until Lahore was cleared, the plane should land at Amritsar airport in India to refuel. The hijackers didn't want the Indian plane to land in India at any cost because it would destroy their plan. But the plane had already flown far and was clearly low on fuel. Even the hijackers realized the shortage of fuel. With no other option, they reluctantly agreed to let the plane land in Amritsar for refueling. Captain Sharan's smart thinking worked. Now, the hijacked plane was going to land inside India at Amritsar airport. Looking at the situation, this was the best chance for the Indian government and authorities to control it. Captain Sharan also saw a ray of hope. He believed that if the plane landed in India, the Indian government would surely do something to defeat the hijackers and save the passengers. But what actually happened turned out to be a historical blunder for India, and shattered Captain Sharan's last hope. As soon as the hijackers agreed, Captain Sharan contacted Amritsar ATC and asked for permission to land at Raja Sansi Airport. The Amritsar ATC gave permission and informed Indian authorities immediately. They waited for the plane to land. At 6:44 p.m., the plane landed at Raja Sansi Airport in Amritsar. As soon as the plane landed, the Punjab police, already on standby, jumped into action and waited for further orders from Delhi. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee was in a meeting with the Crisis Management Group to discuss the hijacking. But no effective solution came out of the meeting. The Punjab police tried many times to contact the hijackers, but the hijackers refused to talk. They only wanted to refuel quickly and take the plane out of Indian territory. When refueling started taking time, the hijackers grew suspicious. They put a gun to Captain Sharan's head and demanded faster refueling. But Delhi's High Command had already ordered that refueling should be delayed. Their goal was to buy more time so that the NSG, National Security Guard, commandos could arrive in Amritsar. The NSG commandos were still 400 kilometers away in Delhi and needed time to reach Amritsar. Time kept passing, and the plane was still not being refueled. Due to the delay, the hijackers started getting more frustrated. They got angry and began beating and hurting several passengers. One of the victims of this frustration was a passenger named Satnam Singh. The hijackers attacked Satnam multiple times in anger. This shocked everyone on the plane. A deep silence spread across the cabin. Everyone became scared and quietly followed whatever the hijackers said. After seeing Satnam being attacked, the captain again contacted the authorities. He warned them that if the plane wasn't refueled quickly, the hijackers would start killing the passengers one by one. The Indian government was under extreme pressure because NSG commandos still needed time to reach Amritsar. To protect the passengers, the decision was made to send a fuel truck to the plane immediately. However, the truck would not only carry fuel but also have Punjab police officers hidden inside. Their job was to secretly puncture the tires of the plane so it could not take off again. Soon, the fuel truck approached the plane at high speed. The air traffic control, ATC, got worried because the truck's speed might raise suspicion among the hijackers. So ATC asked the driver to slow down. But the driver didn't hear the instructions properly and suddenly stopped the truck in the middle of the road. This sudden stop backfired for the Indian government. The hijackers grew suspicious, sensing a trap. They quickly forced Captain Sharan at gunpoint to take off the plane immediately. Captain Sharan tried to delay the takeoff a bit more, but the angry hijackers attacked another passenger named Rupin Katyal, injuring him badly. Rupin was only 25 years old and had just recently gotten married. He was traveling with his wife. However, the hijackers had already separated the women and children from the men, so his wife didn't even know that he was severely injured and bleeding badly. The hijackers didn't stop there. They loaded their guns and pointed them at the other passengers. Seeing all this, the people on the plane started screaming in panic. Now, Captain Sharan had no choice. If he didn't follow the hijackers' orders, a massacre could happen. So, he was forced to take off the plane from Amritsar. At 7:49 p.m., the plane was back in the air. With the plane leaving Amritsar, the last hope that the captain and the passengers had from the Indian government also disappeared. At 7:54 p.m., the Crisis Management Group, CMG, instructed NSG commandos to head to Amritsar. At 7:55 p.m., the NSG team left, but by then, it was too late. If there hadn't been a communication gap between Indian authorities, and if the NSG had been deployed right after the hijack was reported, maybe Amritsar could have been the final stop of the flight. There are also some theories about why the NSG arrived late. One theory suggests that a raw agent named Shashi Bhushan Singh Tomar was on the hijacked plane. He was the brother-in-law of N.K. Singh, the secretary of Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee. Because of this, N.K. Singh allegedly delayed the NSG's arrival on purpose to keep Shashi Bhushan safe. He feared that if the commandos were sent, the hijackers might panic and kill all the passengers. Whatever the real reason was, the plane had already left Amritsar and was in the sky again. Captain Sharan again tried to contact Pakistan Air Traffic Control, but Pakistan once again refused to allow the plane to land at Lahore Airport. They even turned off all the airport lights and navigational aids. Seeing this, Captain Sharan got very worried. He didn't know where or how to land the plane. He already had no proper knowledge of Pakistani airspace. To make things worse, a low fuel warning started showing in the cockpit. Captain Sharan had to land the plane no matter what. As the plane descended, he saw many lights glowing in one area and assumed it was an airport. But as the plane came closer to the ground, he was shocked. It wasn't an airport, it was a highway, and landing there was impossible. Scared, the captain quickly took the plane back up. This time, he clearly told Pakistan ATC that the plane was out of fuel, and if they didn't allow it to land at Lahore Airport, it would crash in the middle of the city, killing not just passengers but also many Pakistani civilians. When Pakistan realized their own people could be in danger, they finally agreed to let the plane land and refuel. Pakistan's refusal to allow the Indian plane to land earlier was part of a larger plan. They were playing a double game in front of the world, trying to act smart without taking direct blame. Later, this true face of Pakistan was exposed. Finally, at 8 p.m., the plane landed at Lahore Airport. Pakistani commandos surrounded the plane from all sides. The passengers were still terrified, but Rupin Katyal was in the worst condition due to being stabbed. The captain and crew requested medical help from Pakistan for Rupin, but Pakistan refused to provide anything beyond fuel. As soon as refueling was done, Pakistan gave an ultimatum to leave their country. On the hijackers' orders, the plane now flew toward Afghanistan. But in 1999, Afghanistan didn't have night landing and takeoff facilities. So, the plane was redirected toward Oman. However, the Omani authorities didn't allow the plane to enter their airspace either. Now, the aircraft started moving toward the United Arab Emirates, UAE. The government of India requested the UAE to allow the hijacked plane to land, and the UAE gave permission to land at Al Minhad Air Base in Dubai. Around 3 a.m., the plane landed in the UAE. After the landing, Indian authorities contacted the UAE government to request permission to send Indian commandos there, but the UAE rejected this request. However, at India's request, the UAE started negotiations with the hijackers. In exchange for refueling the plane, the hijackers agreed to release injured passengers, women, and children. They released 27 passengers, which also included one dead body, that of Rupin Katyal, who had died due to lack of medical treatment. All the released passengers and Rupin's body were brought back to India by an Indian aircraft. To thank the UAE for their help and to receive the passengers, India's Civil Aviation Minister, Sharad Yadav, personally went to the UAE. Once the plane was refueled, it took off again. Since it was almost morning, the plane was flown to Afghanistan. On the morning of 25 December, it landed at Kandahar International Airport in Afghanistan. As soon as it landed, the Taliban surrounded the plane. The Indian government was informed that the plane was now in Afghanistan. This created a new problem for India, as at that time, Afghanistan was under Taliban control, and India did not officially recognize the Taliban government. This made the situation more complicated. Indian officials believed that the hijackers had support from Pakistan's ISI and the Taliban. The Taliban, on the other hand, said they only wanted to help in negotiations between India and the hijackers. Even though India didn't trust the Taliban's intentions, the Indian government asked them to ensure the safety of the passengers and also tried to learn what the hijackers wanted. The hijackers were now overconfident. They believed India would agree to all their demands to save the passengers. So, they asked India to release 36 terrorists who were in Indian prisons. They also demanded the dead body of Sajjad Afghani, a Pakistani militant and commander of the group Harkatul Ansar, who had been killed while trying to escape from an Indian jail. Not only that, they also demanded a ransom of $200 million. Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee was not ready to give in to the hijackers. He strongly refused to accept their demands, as releasing terrorists would mean encouraging future attacks on India. Meanwhile, news channels were reporting every update, including the death of a passenger and injuries to several others. The news that the plane was in Afghanistan was also being shown everywhere. This deeply disturbed the Indian public, especially the families of the passengers on board. These families were worried only about the safety of their loved ones. They wanted their relatives to be freed at any cost. On 26 December 1999, when External Affairs Minister Jaswant Singh was holding a press conference, a crowd of family members gathered and pleaded with him to ensure the safety of their loved ones. Some even angrily demanded that the government agree to the hijackers' demands. Opposition parties also began pressuring the government to take action. So, the Indian government decided to send a negotiation team to Kandahar. This team, led by Senior Foreign Service Officer Vivek Katju, reached Kandahar on 27 December. The Taliban started facilitating the talks between the hijackers and Indian officials. Days passed, but no agreement was reached. The Taliban managed to convince the hijackers to drop their demand for $200 million and Sajjad Afghani's body. However, the hijackers still insisted on the release of 36 prisoners, which the Indian government refused. So, the negotiations were stuck. Inside the plane, the situation was horrible. The passengers and crew had now been held for a full week. There was no food or drinking water left. Even the toilets had overflowed. Every condition inside the plane was causing suffering. As the passengers suffered, pressure on the Indian government increased. Some people were creating a scene inside crisis management meetings, while others were protesting outside Prime Minister Vajpayee's residence. Due to this growing pressure, the negotiation team was asked to quickly make a decision. However, releasing terrorists under pressure would have encouraged more terrorism. Still, the Indian team managed to bring down the hijackers' demands significantly. Instead of 36 prisoners, India agreed to release only 3, chosen by the hijackers. The hijackers selected Maulana Masood Azhar, Ahmad Omar Saeed Sheikh, Mushtaq Ahmad Jargar. These 3 were Pakistani terrorists associated with terrorist groups. To save the lives of passengers, India had to take the tough decision to release them. All 3 were first brought to Delhi, and then sent to Kandahar with Jaswant Singh. As soon as these terrorists arrived, the hijackers released the plane and all the hostages. Indian authorities had hoped that after the hostages were released, the Taliban would arrest the hijackers and hand them over to India. But instead, the Taliban helped all 5 hijackers and the 3 released terrorists escape to Pakistan. The Taliban provided vehicles and ensured that they crossed the Pakistan border safely without being caught by Indian forces. This made it clear that Pakistan was involved in the hijacking. Later, when the Indian government conducted an investigation, many details came to light. The investigation revealed that a terrorist named Mehrajuddin Wani used his connections with Dawood Ibrahim in Nepal to help the hijackers get fake passports and weapons. Mehrajuddin had worked closely with Dawood during the 1993 Mumbai bomb blasts and had a strong network. He used the weak security at Tribhuvan International Airport in Nepal to help the hijackers board the plane with guns and grenades. The identities of all 5 hijackers were uncovered. They were all from Pakistan, and their real names were Ibrahim Akhtar, Sunni Ahmad Thazi, Shahid Akhtar Syed Shakir, Jahur Mistri. All 5 were members of the Pakistani terrorist group Harkatul Mujahideen. The investigation also found that the Defense Minister of Afghanistan, Mullah Muhammad Yaqub, son of Taliban leader Mullah Omar, was involved in the hijacking. So, it became clear that Pakistan and the Taliban were both responsible for the hijacking. As India later stated, we have evidence to show that the hijackers were encouraged by Pakistan. Finally, on 31 December 1999, after releasing the 3 terrorists, all the hostages and crew members were brought back safely to New Delhi. The Indian government succeeded in bringing them back, but at a very heavy cost.